now we are recording. So yeah, so today's meeting is very interesting because we will have something slightly more technical than usual, I think. And it's related with UX UI design, but it's very important if you want to get into tech because all the tech companies, not all, but the majority use agile methodologies for the managing the projects in the companies. And it's sometimes difficult to see how a designers go into this way of managing projects. I'm a software engineer before I was a designer, so I know about that. But I know for people like they are not uh, used to work in tech, this is a new way to work. It's not only about the things how you organize things; it's about the whole philosophy, and it's very interesting. So today we have Luciana. Luciana is a Scrum Master, if I'm not mistaken, and she's expert in the Agile methodology. So she will tell us how what is the role of the designers in this teamwork, and yeah, and tell us about her experience working in the industry. So Luciana, if you want to start, you want to introduce yourself, and yes, all yours.
Thank you very much, Liz. Thank you for inviting me here today. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys, and hopefully we can also connect. I'm not an expert, but thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. But yeah, I don't think that we are experts in anything. We are the whole purpose of especially working in tech is to constantly evolving and improving and learning new things. I worked as a project manager in many projects throughout my career, and recently I worked as a Scrum Master. But right now I am a web developer here in Vancouver. And when Diana invited me to talk about Scrum and then for a group of UI UX designers, I found it very interesting because I once myself doubted the power that UI UX has on any software development, because you can have a great software, but you don't have a good design or even a good experience, nobody's going to use your application, right? So that is super important. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the experience that I have working with the Scrum projects, not only as a Scrum Master, but also as part of a team using Scrum. And then let me start sharing. Okay. All right, can everybody see?
Yes.
The introduction. All right, okay, so here we go. I know we're gonna have questions and answers at the end, but feel free if you wanna ask anything or even, add something, that would be super welcome. Okay, here we go. So here's my, let me put this up here. Okay, so here's my contact and a little bit of my background. I have 2 diplomas in computer science. I have 1 specialization in system analysis, which I worked most of my career. I'm also AWS Cloud Practitioner certified. Nowadays everybody is going to cloud, so I thought I might as well, get some certification and some knowledge in cloud. Currently, I'm a web developer and database developer at Pivot Point. It's a company that provides services for children and youth with disability in BC. Most of my career, I worked as a business and system analyst and software developer as well, and mostly in telecom companies. And I was most of the time my specialization was a backend developer. I was never really good in front end, so that's why I value so much the job that UI UX designers do. I also was a team leader and assistant developer manager for Sky and DirecTV in Latin America. These are the two main projects, like really big projects that I participated, which was the startup of these services in Latin America, mobile services and pay TV. My interest in tech is basically data analytics. I'm a database lover. I think that we can do tons of things with data, and most of the companies still don't know how to use that properly. So I've been doing some, research on my own on AI, machine learning. I have some courses and hopefully future projects in that. So today we are going to speak about the Scrum. So just a quick introduction. Maybe some of you don't know the difference between Agile and Waterfall model. Waterfall model was a very traditional model for software development, used many years. It's not that it's bad, that's why it got replaced for Agile. It's just a different way of working. And then the main difference is that the waterfall, like I mentioned here, is a linear approach. So one step follows the other. So the other usually cannot complete until the previous one has been completed. And the team relies usually on a project manager to take decisions, to remove impediments, to set up the pace of the project and everything, organization and all that. The main flaw, as I might say, in my opinion, this methodology is the fact that the product is only delivered at the end. So it used to take a very long time since the beginning, when gathering requirements and the designing, system analysis, database modeling and everything, until the coding and testing and acceptance. So by the time that I get it to the acceptance by the user, the product might be already outdated. A lot of changes happen throughout the project. There might be some scope creeps, and that creates a lot of stress within the team. So some guys, they came up with this Agile idea, and then I'll leave you the link with the Agile manifesto that you can read. It was a lot of software developers and architects and people that worked in tech. They came up with this idea of having those iterations within a project that you could deliver fast, and with a lot of organization, collaboration, and especially self-organization within the team. So the team basically in Agile decides the course of action and what to do, what is the best approach, and they also decide what they're going to be doing within those time slots that we call them in Scrum, we call them sprints. So that doesn't rely only on the project manager, right? So the team is self-managed, as I might say. What is a Scrum? A Scrum is a framework within the Agile methodology. So a framework means that you have the methodology, but if you can apply some processes within the framework. It's been around since 1990, and I believe it started with the automobile industry back in Japan, if I'm not mistaken. So it uses iterative and incremental development model. And one thing that I found it very interesting is that it's based on empiricism. Empiricism values your previous knowledge, right? So everything that you did in the past that you can apply in the future or you can improve in the future, that values a lot in Scrum. And in Scrum, it emphasizes teamwork, accountability, and iterative progress towards a goal. So these are the main pillars of Scrum: transparency, so which means that the goal, everything that happens within the project has to be transparent to the project, to the stakeholders. And a very important piece of Scrum is what we call the definition of done. So when is a product considered done? So every project, every Scrum project has a different definition of done. and the definition of done is made within the team. So as example of definition of done, it would be like, for example, a product is delivered when all the unit tests have passed, when the code has been reviewed, or also when the user acceptance test has been completed in, I don't know, 90% or things like that. So it's a commitment, some statements that the team decides and agrees, and of when the product is considered to be done and can be delivered. Inspection and adaptation. Inspection, like I said, the Scrum team is self-organized. So we're going to talk about the artifacts, progress towards the goal. So those artifacts, how they help the pace of the project, and adaptation. So adaptation means, everything that happens within a sprint, within those time slots of development, how they can be changed and adapted if something went wrong, for example. So who is the Scrum team? The Scrum team, like I said, is self-organized, so it doesn't rely on the Scrum Master, for example. The Scrum Master is not a boss. The product owner is not a boss. They're just some people that are there as part of the team to make sure that everything goes smooth, that all impediments are removed. And especially the product owner maximizes the value of the product. So he or she tells exactly what the product will look like, the features, all the acceptance criteria for that product to be delivered. So we have the development team, and within the development team, there are UI UX designers, programmers, database designers, architects, QA analysts, and so forth. Product owner, like I said, is I think it's a self-explanatory. It maximizes the value of the product. And an important piece that the product owner owns is the product backlog. And we're going to talk about that in a little while. The product backlog is one of the Scrum artifacts. And the Scrum Master is just somebody that facilitates and promotes Scrum within the organization. So the Scrum Master makes sure that everything is happening, make sure that the people know exactly what to do and they have everything they need to go on with the project. So what are the Scrum events? I spoke about the artifacts, right? And then artifacts are the product backlog, which is a list of everything that you're going to be doing along the project to deliver a product. And then we're going to have the sprint backlog, which is the set of things out of the product backlog that we're going to be doing within the sprint. So the sprint is the heart of Scrum. Everything starts with the list of things to do, which is the product backlog. The product owner and the team and the Scrum Master, they usually get together every now and then. It really depends on the project. And then they pick, the list of things out of the product backlog that are going to fit within a time box period of time. This is what we call a sprint. And after that is done, another cycle begins. That's why it's iterative. When we have one of the events that we have in Scrum is the sprint planning meeting. So the sprint planning meeting is actually when we plan the sprint and we come out with a list of things to do within the sprint and the sprint goals. What is the sprint goal? What do we want to achieve? So a sprint goal could be, for example, we're going to implement credit card payment, for example, in this sprint, or we're going to implement a customer sign up, things like that. So like I said, the input comes from the product backlog and it starts right after the conclusion of the previous one. So that's why it's a cycle. So events are made for inspection and adaptation. Remember, I spoke in the previous slide about the three pillars. So in the next slide, you can easily see what the Scrum looks like overall. So what we have here defined by the product owner is the product backlog, all the items that we're going to be doing in the project. And the sprint planning meeting, which is, this first one on the left-hand side, we review the product backlog, and then we pick those that are going to fit within the sprint. We set up the sprint goal, estimate, and commit to the sprint. So the sprint begins is usually the 1 week or 2 week period. Throughout the sprint, we have another important event, which is called Daily Scrum. Daily Scrum is a meeting for all the team, the Scrum Master, the product owner, and then within, it's only a 15-minute meeting. It cannot be longer than that. So we just say, okay, what we did in the previous day, what we're going to do, what's our plan, and if the team has any blockers or any impediments that the Scrum Master needs to act upon and remove that. So make sure that everybody's working. If any problem comes up during the like a technical issue during the daily Scrum, that is not resolved within that meeting. So another meeting takes place, outside the daily Scrum. So we keep within the 15-minute time box. Then the sprint occurs when the definition of done is reached. Remember, I spoke the definition of done. We have the sprint review. The sprint review is basically the demo of the product, and the product that is delivered in every sprint we call increment, because remember, the final project is going to be delivered at the end. So within those cycles, we have increments of the product. So we basically demo the increment to everybody in the team, to the stakeholders. We say what was done, if there's anything that couldn't be done within that sprint, that's going to be carried over to the next one, things like that. And another event that is super important is the spring retrospective. Retrospective is a meeting that the Scrum Master may or may not participate, but the product owner does not participate. It's a meeting for the team. So usually what they do is they say, okay, what went well, what didn't go well, and what needs to improve for the upcoming sprints. So basically, very high level overall, that's what the Scrum events looks like. And then I'm going to talk about the designer's role within Scrum, which is the main subject of this meeting tonight. So the main role of a UI UX in Scrum is actually in what we call the pre-sprint. And some companies, they call it a design sprint. So the sprint is actually when the development, when the coding takes place, when the design of the software takes place. But usually the UI UX designers, they have a previous job, right? To get all those items from the product backlog and work on them. So they are ready, the design and the experience, all the workflows and the wireframes and the mockups, they're all ready to be implemented within the sprint. So they work very closely to the product owner in the requirements phase to understand exactly what that feature looks like. They come up with the personas, what kind of users are we going to have for our application. They must have a clear understanding of the product vision and its requirements, of course, basically for the experience. Work closely to the business analyst to provide material for the user stories and acceptance criteria. User stories are just, very briefly statements that describe what a feature will be in terms of the user that it's going to be using your application or that specific feature, and the acceptance criteria, all the definitions, all the things that need to be in that specific story or that specific feature. They define use cases based on personas, like I said, and ensure developers have a clear understanding of the design work. So usually what happens also, when everything is done on the UI UX designer side, they get together with the developers to explain, what the work of the UI and UX is going to be for them. They work closely to the QA, to the testers as well, to make sure the design requirements were met. So as soon as the feature or the user story is released for testing, so another role of the UI UX designers is to make sure that everything is in there, or if not, if they need to adjust something for a technical problem or anything. What are the main designers' challenges, in my point of view, in the projects that I participated? One thing that I can think of is the influence of senior members. So especially if it's a designer, like a junior designer, doesn't have a lot of experience, might not be very, self-confident. So there's a lot of influence of senior members, and not only senior designers, but like senior software engineers, programmers, that worked with many projects before, and then they have some experience indeed, because they have implemented very good designs, very good experiences. So that might influence on the designer's role. And then the second item here, I mentioned, everybody has design ideas, right? So, when we are developing software, the backend developer, the product owner, everybody that is there, they have some great design ideas. We are all application users, and we like, some of the tools, we like some widgets, and then we usually come up with these great ideas. But are they really great? Because we are not specialists on those. So the designers need to be very careful with that. Lack of technical knowledge or tools, especially for junior ones, they may not have enough knowledge from previous experience of, what a good design looks like, what a good experience looks like, and then unfortunately, they would not be able to apply, and then we may fall into, a pitfall or something in the UI UX. Lack of understanding of the requirements. That's basically a problem caused by the product owner. If we don't have a product owner that is very efficient within Scrum, then the requirements will be super weak, not only for the UI UX designers, for everybody, for the business analysts, for the developers, database designers, everybody. So the role of the product owner is crucial here. Lack of design concepts by the team. And what I mean by that is that sometimes the UI UX design come up with the this idea of this great experience, but because the team doesn't have the whole team in Scrum doesn't have that concept of an experience, of what an experience looks like in terms of dealing with the software, navigating through the pages, how many pages you have to go through to reach your goal, or things like that. That's going to be a flaw within the project, because like I said, the team is self-organized, they are collaborative, so everybody in the team supports each other. So if we are not, and I mean the Scrum team, if we're not on the same page, that no Scrum team can succeed with that. So it's super important that the team share all this experience, so the final product is going to be successful. Because UI UX designers work in the pre-sprint, like I mentioned, or should be working in the pre-sprint, they are usually shared by other teams, other projects. And that can be a problem, because remember in the previous slide, I said that they work closely with the product owner. They work closely with a business analyst to provide the material to come up with the the flows and the wireframes, and then they work closely with the developers, trying to pass all that information to them, make sure that everything's clear for them. And then they work with QA. So they do work in every phase of the Scrum. And if they are shared by another project, so they may not have enough time to contribute in neither one of the projects. And another problem is the fast-paced project does not accommodate design in pre-sprint. So I've worked with a lot of companies that they said, no, we're not going to have a pre-sprint. The design has to fit within that time box, within 2 weeks. So that is super crazy. You can develop a good work in design because there's so many things involved, and especially you need to have the acceptance by the product owner. That cannot happen within 1 or 2 days, right? It's a lot of work, it's a lot of investigation and research to come up with good ideas. How do we overcome those challenges? I mean, these are some ideas. Maybe some of you have already experienced some challenges, and maybe have different ideas, but I try to come up with some. So I think for me, the crucial part is the product owner role. It's super important that we have a strong and efficient product owner, because if we do, the backlog is going to be refined properly, the requirements will be clear, so everybody knows exactly what to do. And if there is any impediment, he or she will know exactly how to deal with. Efficient Scrum Master to make sure that everyone adheres to the Scrum methodology. If a company has always worked with the Waterfall model, in the beginning of any Agile methodology, it's super important that we have that change of mindset. So that's when the role of the Scrum Master plays the most important part. And also, if the Scrum Master is efficient, to remove the impediments, right, throughout the organization, throughout the stakeholders. Because if he or she doesn't, then there's no point of having a Scrum Master. That's what he or she is there for. Good knowledge of the product and technical skills within the team, not only for UI, UX designers. All the team needs to have a full understanding of what they are developing. Team support is super important. So whenever one of the team members is facing a problem or a technical issue, everybody goes and supports and tries to help. So that's why you find a lot of Scrum teams, like a web developer, a software engineer also does, for example, database design, database modeling, right? So they play this part. It's like one covers the other. So that is super important. The team itself, the team is self-organized, like I said. Issues are resolved within the team. If there is any problem, any issue, the team is capable of resolving and taking actions and taking decisions. Even, for example, if one of the user stories cannot be done, the team is empowered enough to tell the product owner, this is not going to be done with this sprint. We're going to carry over to the next one because this, and that. So in other words, the team does not need anybody's authorization to make any decisions. Understand developers' tools and their limitations as far as designs. I've seen a few times, a great design, a great experience, beautiful frameworks, but the library that the developers were working unfortunately did not accomplish that. So this is usually done prior to the start of the project. We as a team, and the product owner, the developers, software architects, designers, they usually get together and they decide in which tools, what their stack is going to be. And try to keep UI UX work ahead of sprint. That is super important. Remember I said, there are some companies that do not have that pre-sprint. They want the UI UX to be done within the sprint. We should try to avoid that at all costs. So yeah, that was the end of my presentation. I just wanted to give you a brief understanding what the Scrum look like and the role of the UI UX designers, the challenges. Some of the challenges not only UI UX designers face, but developers face as well. QA is a super important part, and some of the companies, they don't even have QA. What is done, and let's move on to the next. So quality plays a big issue within Scrum. And thank you very much. Now I think we can open for, I don't know, conversation, discussions, and anything. So this is my contact, my email, my LinkedIn profile. Feel free to connect. Send me an email. I have also a few, let me see here. I have a few links if you want to. I actually found a super interesting video that I'm gonna share with you. Let me go back here. Some of the links that if you want to know more about, yeah, right here. If you want to know more about Scrum or about Agile, and I'll give you that. Hold on, let me find out where it is. Meanwhile, if anybody has anything to say or to ask or to add, feel free. You're more than welcome to share your experiences.
Thank you very much, Luciana. It was a very good presentation. I think Scrum is something that is more, developers talk more about that, and as designers, we never maybe understand what is happening in Scrum, because it's meant more for developers maybe, or that's why the people think about that. But I think the reality of many companies, we don't have time many times for doing a design sprint, so we are designing over like ideas of everyone, and in 2 weeks we have to finish something. Like ideally we will finish in maybe 1 month with the appropriate research and all that. So it's interesting to know how the Scrum is applied in the companies, and what is our role there, and all the problems we have there. So is there anyone wants to have any want to ask something to Luciana? I have some questions, but I want you to start first if you have any.
Oh, questions. By the way, I just want to tell on. Thank you, Luciana, for sharing. So previously, actually, Luciana and I worked together in the team. So she is my former project manager, where I'm working as a UI UX designer. At my very first job, I'm not so much. I have a very little understanding about Scrum, and she pretty much explained everything about, what is sprint planning, what do we do in the meeting, in the sprint planning meeting, for example. And then when I see the slides again, it's kind of bring me back to those days. Oh yeah, we are doing this on the previous company.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned, Diana, and thanks for mentioning, because I remember that when I joined, the designers, they did not participate in the planning meeting, right? And it was super important, and I was like, why? They play such an important role, because basically they're going to build the experience. I mean, the design is something important, right? Because you want to see something pleasant to the eye, but the experience has to be great. So when I joined, I said, no, the designers have to be there. So yeah, so that's why it wasn't your fault, maybe, that you were not involved.
So I have a question, Luciana.
Of course.
So as As designers, we work in what the developers normally see is the final wireframes and mockups, high fidelity mockups, and then they work with that and with all the handoff documents we gave to them. But before that, we ideally we will work on personas and the user stories and all that. But in my experience as a developer, and I know that developers think the same, like we never actually take care too much about that. We don't care about the personas or anything about the context of the product because we have to code, we have to do something fast. So how do you think a designer can promote that understanding in the developers, like more about context and how is the best approach for bringing that to the team?
That's a great question, but actually, it's not your fault, and it's not nobody's fault. It's usually because the companies, they work in such a fast-paced environment, and then what I've seen in some companies is that they value so much the coding, the programmers, because they are actually the ones that are going to build that they don't value so much like the business analysts, like the flows, the functional requirements. And I've heard many times, product owners or like end users saying, oh, no, we don't need this flow, we can do without it. No, yeah, well, actually we do. So I think that the team has to be empowered enough in the person that does that in Scrum is actually the product owner. It's not even the Scrum Master, in my opinion, because the Scrum Master just facilitates. The product owner needs to make sure that the product is going to be great, right? It's his or her product. So it's his interest that the designers, the BAs, for example, and the QA testers, they also need to play an important role, even in the beginning of the sprint, because they need to define all the test cases and to make sure that the integrated tests are going to pass, for example, to make sure that the user acceptance test is going to be successful. So it's part of the product owner role to empower the team to work on these different things. So for instance, if you want to work on, searching about personas for your application, you need to have the time to do that, right? So that's why the pre-sprint that I mentioned, it's so important within a project. And if the product owner doesn't see that value, what I've seen these days, and nowadays we have the product owner certification, right? So a lot of the product owners are indeed certified, so they do know. What they have to do is they also need to be empowered to make sure that these things happen, because they are being, pressured by the stakeholders, by the CEO, by the other users. So they want everything to be fast as well. But they need to guarantee that every phase that is important for the product, it's going to take place. Did I answer your question? If
Yes.
not, let me know.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Does anyone has another question? Yeah, you can put something in the chat or you can unmute yourself. No questions.
How many? I was just going to ask, how many designers
60.
do we have here?
We have 15 people in the room, and we are all designers or trying to be.
Nice.
Trixie had a question.
Yeah, hi. I guess I really just wanted to know if, you have, so many years of experience doing what you do. And I guess I was just curious to know how you've seen over time the buy-in with design, because I realize that, UX design is something that's becoming newer and newer to companies that say have not had design teams over decades, as they've had their products. But now that there's a lot of buy-in with a lot of companies, and we're seeing this influx of hiring for design teams, and everyone's more new, I guess companies are newer to learning how design fits into the bigger picture. And I guess I just was curious to know where how much you've seen that growth and how companies have, I guess, adjusted to that, considering you come from the development side, the engineering side.
Thank you for asking this. It's super interesting. I think that I've seen this movement of having more and more designers in two sectors, like in the tech. For obvious reasons, I think anyone who's in tech knows the importance of UI UX design, and in big companies, because what I've seen also is that in small businesses, they sometimes don't have enough budget, they don't have the resources to hire not only the designers, but to hire a business analyst, for example. And I'll give you an example. The company that I'm working right now is a small company, and I am a developer. We don't have a design. And I'll tell you what, I struggle every time. And I'm a backend. Remember, I told you I like backend. I struggle when I have to do front end because I don't have a designer. And I don't have anything to start with. And I go, and then sometimes they go, if they say, oh, just place a button here that does this, this, and that, it's okay. But like build everything from scratch, like a new functionality, navigation, goes back and forth. It's so hard. It's so hard. So I think about, Diana, I think about you all the time. So, and I'm trying to slowly plant that seed into their minds so they know what a good design makes the difference within the application. So that's why I think that the big companies and the tech companies, they value this a lot, because like I said, you may have a great product that does absolutely great things, but if you don't have a good experience, you're not going to use it. It's just like us as consumers. You like a store so much, and then if you go there, they have beautiful products. Like, I don't know, girls like shoes, right? So you go to a store and they have beautiful shoes. But if the attendant did not serve you well, did not help you, with kindness, cordiality, you're not going to go back there. I'm not going back there. I choose another one, right? When I have a good experience. And that reminds me of a story that I heard actually during a speech. It was a salesman, and he mentioned the example of Disney World. You never go to Disney World and you come back sad. No matter what happened, you may have like a flat tire in the parking lot on your way out to the park. They're going to find a way, because that happened to him. And he had his kids and etc. It was a long story, but just to make it short, he was going out of the park, and then on his way out, he found his car with a flat tire. And then kids are exhausted. They've been walking in the park all day. And then all of a sudden, there comes this whole Disney World crew in a car, super nice. And then they take the kids to an area where they have games and, and food. And then another crew comes to replace the tire while the kids are still having fun. So they want to make sure that you get out of Disney with a good experience. So I think that the big companies and the tech companies know that already. We just need to make sure that the small ones know that too.
By the way,
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Luciana, you got a question from Christy on the chat.
Oh, I do?
Yeah. So let me read you a question, or you can check on the chat as well. Other than knowledge and confidence with the tool and software, what are some other important difference between a senior and junior level designer?
Oh, that's great. I think that this does not only apply to the designers. I think that the difference between a senior level and a junior level is actually two things. First is experience. Of course, a senior level person, and I'm not only talking about the designers, but programmers, anybody, will have more experience. So he or she will know things that worked, things that didn't work, so they won't try to apply it again, right? And the second thing is that everybody must have is to be humble enough to know that no matter how senior you are, you always have to learn. And you also learn from the junior level people as well, you know, so we never underestimate people's knowledge. We always learn from each other. We give something and we always receive something back. And especially in tech, there's always something to learn. So nobody is expert enough that knows everything. So we have to be able to listen and make sure that we are constantly learning, and for our own growth in our career. And you know, you guys know in tech, you always have to study. You know, you never quit studying. So if you don't like studying, we shouldn't be working tech. It changes every day, right? So yeah, I think it's basically this, because the more we learn and the more we are humble enough to know that we have to learn new things, we're going to grow so much, and we're going to have different attitudes towards the team and towards any project, and we're going to be more self-confident in everything we do.
Great, thank you, Luciana. Maybe the last question before ending this meeting. So you are a developer. So what is for you a good designer? If you can think of the best designer you have in any company, what was the characteristic of this designer? Why did you like it so much?
I think that what I really like is the designer to give you different approaches. So he or she doesn't only come with the plan A. There's always a plan B. There's a plan C as well. And that's what's important, because let's say that, you know, they have this great idea of implementing something that we cannot do. So, okay, plan A is discarded. So what is plan B? So I think that a good designer has always, you know, a second card. He or she always has a plan B. That's what I think it's important, because that it's not only just a matter of plan A doesn't work, but then maybe they both work, plan A and plan B. And what I think is that good, like I said, the self-organization of the team in Scrum to be able to say, oh, okay, I think I like plan A better than B, right? It's not only a matter of, you know, the product owner deciding. The team can also participate, can also collaborate. And the more and more the teams today, even developers, you know, programmers, they have a different approach nowadays than when I first started. Because when I first started, it was just, you know, like a piece of paper with a requirement, do this, and then we used to code, and that's it, we deliver. But now I think that there's a change of mindset, that the programmers, you know, people that are actually there just coding, they also think about the functionality, they think about the user, so they're more towards the business side as well. So I think that UI UX are super business oriented, and that's what makes them great.
Luciana, we have another question from Arturo on the chat.
Yeah.
I'll read for the question for you. Arturo, if you want to ask your question right away.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'll ask it. I spelled it all wrong. My sentence structure was off. I'm sorry. My question was, like somebody like me, I have zero experience in UI UX. What would be like your recommended roadmap to getting started?
Oh, great question, Arturo. What is your experience right now?
I currently have close to 10 years in working in the service industry, as far as being like a bartender, server. I just recently started working for USAA as well. So I made that jump to doing that. But I've always had an interest in IT, UI, UX. And I remember reading an article maybe like about a year ago of exactly what you were talking about today, like Scrum Master, the Waterfall, Agile methodologies. And I just want to get as much information as I possibly can.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, I think that, for any change of career or anything that any goal that we have, any objective that we have, the most difficult thing is to take the first step, right? So, before we talk about the roadmap, and I think you need to take the first step. And what would be the first step towards tech? It's to study and take, I don't know if you can't right now for any reason, you can go to a certified course or anything. There's tons of resources online, and there's tons of resources free. So you can start with that, and commit to that, because it's very easy that we take that we say, okay, I'm going to take an online course on this, and then some other things get in our way and we end up not doing it. So reserve a portion of your day towards your goal, and that applies to everything. Even if you want to go on a diet, for example, you need to set up a time to work towards your goal every day, because the consistent actions, that's what's going to make us each day one step closer to our goal. If we don't do it, we're always going to be one step further than our goal. So start doing this. Second of all, I believe you should also join the just groups like this where you can share ideas. Networking is super important. Sometimes you find like a project that you could work as a volunteer, for example, just apprentice, so you learn. And then once you are in more familiar with the concepts, with everything, try to take a certification course. There's diploma in UI UX and a secondary education, but you can try, if you can do that right now, try to do a certification. I think in tech there's so much value in software certifications. And the more you get certified, the more experience you have, and then the more networking you will also have, and the more projects will appear. And for someone like with no experience, and I believe that any type of volunteer project, even if it's not UI UX, but there's something that involves UI UX, you could be there just doing, whatever, like maybe documenting, things like that, because you're going to be learning, you're going to be listening, you're going to be networking. So there's tons of possibilities, but I would start right now to learn the concepts. Because it's like, it's like coding. I find today a lot of people that says, oh, okay, that's super nice. Oh, I want to learn, I want to build my own website. Yeah, anybody can do HTML and CSS, just like that. But to do something with, some quality, with some concepts, with, integrity, with security, that's another level, right? But you need to have the basic concepts first. Did I help you in any way?
Yes, ma'am, you did. Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah, and Arturo, I send you that link. I will be mentoring that UX designer for completely beginners. So if you want to know what design is, just I hope I can see you there.
Oh, awesome. There you go.
Yes. Okay, Luciana, I know you have to run now. Thank you very much for coming. It was very interesting for all of us. And everyone, I hope to see you next Wednesday.
And
Thank you very much for inviting me. It was great. Yeah, and I hope to connect with you guys. If I can be of any help, just send me an email, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll be super glad to help.
yeah, I'll share Luciana LinkedIn on the chat. Let me copy the LinkedIn first, but thank you so much, Luciana. If I know that you have to go, if you have to go, that's okay.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much,
you.
guys. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you very much. See you
Thank-
this Friday, happy hour, or next Wednesday.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.